Hey guys, I'm Reed Coverdale, and you're watching The Naturalist Capitalist. Thanks for tuning in. As you can see, I'm wearing my Tulsi 2020 shirt. I already did a video about why I supported her and why I don't anymore, and some decisions she's made that have disenchanted me with her. But that video was pretty general. It was more about her as a person, how her campaign was run. This video, I want to talk about what I specifically agreed and disagreed with her on. I actually did do one of those I side with tests, and it said I agree with her on 80% of the issues. Those things are of questionable validity. Um, if I on the same test, it says I agreed with Jacob Hornberger 85% of the time, Rand Paul 87, Ron Paul 88, Bill Weld 82 or something. So I don't know. It seemed to work well for me, but it doesn't work for everyone. So that's not a very good way of doing it. Um, I definitely agreed with her much more than I disagreed with her, and where we disagreed, I felt like she was going to be reasonable and not a hardline idealist. So it's easier to point out the things I disagreed with her on. So I disagreed with her on college education. I disagreed with her on healthcare. I disagreed with her on reparations. I disagreed with her on some gun control things. And then some things with Wall Street and banking, I didn't quite agree with her on. I agreed with her on the corruption and the problems, but I didn't have exactly the same solutions. And then I might be missing something, but that's pretty much it. Except maybe a $15 minimum wage I disagreed with, and then universal basic income. That's another one. I don't agree with that. And a couple small things when it came to economics outside of those. Uh, I think that some policies she supported, like the $15 minimum wage and then like the equal pay for equal work, I understand the sentiment behind those things and I have the same goals, but I don't think that those actually accomplish anything. I think they end up hurting the people that they're meant to help. So, for example, the $15 minimum wage, if you're a low skilled minority in a poor community, it's going to be much harder for you to get a job because the minimum wage has been lifted above your skill level. So you end up hurting those people. So I don't agree with that. And then the same with like equal pay for equal work. If a guy is a racist or a sexist, just a bad dude who owns a business and he doesn't want to pay a woman the same amount he'd pay a man, he's going to hire all men if he has to pay them the same. I don't, so it's not that I think businesses, it's not that I feel sorry for businesses. It's just I'm pragmatic and I realize what the result is going to be. If you get rid of the equal pay for equal work, if he wants to hire a woman for a little less than a man, isn't that better for her than no job? And then if she proves to be better than a man, he's going to have to be an idiot if he's going to use his sexist approach instead of being a smart businessman and realizing, wow, this is a valuable employee. I just don't think that these government initiated programs and policies actually end up helping the people they're meant to help. And that's why I'm against them. It's not that I don't agree with the sentiment. I think a guy who would hire a woman who is just as qualified as a man and wouldn't pay them the same, I think he's a schmuck. But I just realize that he's not going, if he's forced to hire them for the same amount, he's going to look for a man instead. I just realize that's what's going to happen. And it's stupid, but it's the real world. So that really is kind of where I disagree with her in general, is that I think even the things I disagreed with her on, they were well intended, but they wouldn't work. So when it comes to free college, I think the reason college is so expensive is because, first of all, everybody is encouraged to go no matter what. And I didn't go to college. I made over 120 grand last year, no college degree, and I'm 26. and I just went into the trades. I think a lot of people should do that. I think a lot of people who are encouraged to go to a 4-year college do not need to go. And I think government-backed student loans have driven the price of college up higher and higher. And the colleges can raise their prices however much they want because they know the government's going to guarantee the loans. So I think the secret to bringing the cost of college down is not encouraging everybody to go and getting the government out of the student loan business. And fewer people will go to college, and then to entice people who have to go to college, colleges would be forced to bring their prices down. I think if you make college free, then you cheapen its value. I think instead of fewer people going, you'll have more people go who don't need to go, and they're going to waste 4 years of their lives drinking and partying like they do anyway. At least now when they do that, they have to pay for it. But if they don't have to pay for it, what's going to stop them? And so I don't see any accountability coming out of making college free. She did have a more nuanced plan than Bernie Sanders. She talked a lot about why college was so expensive, and she agreed with what I just said about the reason for college being expensive. And she said we need to look at degrees that will have a high likelihood of job opportunities afterward. The problem is she never actually wrote an entire bill for it. She co-sponsored something in the House earlier that was more along the lines of what Bernie Sanders wanted. But she had her own college plan, and she kept saying she was going to release it. All we ever saw was the few paragraphs on her page and then the legislation she's co-sponsored in the past. So if she had actually come out with some very detailed bill about how we're only going to approve these certain degrees, and if there were some sort of cap, like you can only go once for free or something, I would have given it more of a look. But there wasn't enough reason to, because there weren't enough details about what her plan was. Reparations, again, she was nuanced on it. She said it was something that she thought we needed to research. And I disagree when it comes to just throwing money at the problem. I don't think that fixes anything. Rand Paul actually had the idea of, hard-hit communities, giving them more tax breaks, making it easier for small businesses to grow. If she had some sort of idea like that, or negative income tax or something, I don't know, I would give it a look. I think it's foolish not to give anything a look. Even as a libertarian, if there's a government program someone wants, I'm going to be skeptical, but I'll look at it. But that also didn't really materialize. It was still an idea, we need to research it, look into it. When it came to her healthcare plan, originally I actually sort of liked how it sounded, and it was what Australia has, basically. And it sounded pretty good. It didn't sound like it was full control of the government. It sounded like it removed the drug companies and the insurance companies from being middlemen in a lot of ways, so it would do away with corporatism and driving up of prices. It sounded interesting, and that was honestly something I was on the fence with when I was on her campaign. But now I'm against it, and it's just because of how obviously ineffective the government is at doing anything. They can't even do a one-time payment to us without fucking it up beyond recognition. So I'm not a fan of that anymore. When I was on her campaign, I was skeptical of it, but had an open ear to the idea. So yeah, universal basic income. That's the next thing. I remember listening to Andrew Yang about it and thinking, wow, there's actually something to this. It's thought out. When you first hear it, it sounds dumb, but when you start listening to it, it makes more sense. I felt that way until now, or I should say until a couple months ago. The idea isn't terrible. Its execution, I highly doubt would ever be fulfilled to the proper extent. I think it would be full of corruption. It would be ineffective. And I do think it has some unintended consequences of killing some initiative to work. I do think it would. Um, so I don't know. Universal basic income is one of those things that some libertarians actually support. I gotta admit, I'm not like completely opposed to the idea on every single level. I just highly doubt its implementation would ever be responsible. We can't even have a balanced budget now. I can't imagine trying to have a balanced budget with, I think that comes out to like $3 trillion a year. So you're trying to add that on top of what we already have. I highly doubt it could ever work. Um, but yeah, so I'm closed on the idea now unless someone comes up with a plan that really makes a lot of sense. Um, so that was another thing I disagreed with her on. I'm trying to think. So when it came to Wall Street and the banks and everything, I think she was right about how unfair the bailouts of 2008 were and how they screwed over a ton of small businesses, and the banks and the big businesses came out of it fine. I She wants more regulation and she wants to reinstate Glass Steagall. I'm not necessarily opposed to all those things. I just don't think they're going to work. I think the problem was in the first place that those banks had government backing. I think the government should just have not been involved at all and they shouldn't have bailed anybody out. So if you don't have any of those bailouts and the banks have to compete for security, if a bank has to prove to you that it's going to be responsible instead of saying, oh, the government's in control, then by default things are going to be run better. So I wasn't. I'm not super hard. I'm not super against what she was saying there, but I just don't think it's the most effective way. I think the problem is we have too many regulations and too many protections, and that's what lets people and businesses and banks be cavalier with their money. I think we need less so that people and banks and businesses are more responsible. They'll save more. They won't do. They won't take part in dangerous investments or irresponsible loans. I think that the government just needs to get out of the way, and she had a slightly different opinion on that. And then gun control. She was really soft on gun control compared to the other Democrats, and she was also sort of back and forth. So, like the assault weapons ban, she didn't vote for like four or five of them, and then she ended up voting for one in 2018. She hasn't voted for one this year or last year. So she's only voted for one of those. She did vote for something called like the assault weapons. I forget what it is, registration act or something. It was something about registering assault weapons. So those I was definitely against. Red flag laws, she hasn't voted for any legislation for them. Last year, she started toying with the idea toward the end of the year, but then she sort of backed off of it. I hope it's because she realized how corrupted that idea is and that it's basically civil asset forfeiture and that there's not enough due process. I hope that's why she backed away from it. It might be because people on her campaign like me were harassing her so much for it, or she realized she'd lose support if she supported. I don't know. Either way, she wasn't hard on that. And then things like magazine capacity, she wasn't very hard on either. I had the feeling that she was sort of towing the line to the extent that she did just to pacify the Democrats. There's nothing about her that screams gun grabber. She straight up didn't co-sponsor bills in Congress till like 2018 after the Parkland shooting. And that was a very politically and emotionally charged time. I still disagree with any legislation that she signed, but it's unfair to paint her with the same brush as everybody else on that issue. So she was somebody I knew that I'd be able to work with on that, and that I wasn't afraid was going to, try to do away with the Second Amendment or even regulate it too much. It was obviously a complete back burner issue, and to me, it was almost something just to pacify the frothy Democrats who supported her. So those are. I think I covered pretty much everything there. That's pretty much what I disagreed with her on. I fully agreed with her on almost everything else. The only thing I would say is when it came to foreign policy, I disagreed with her on the war on terror. I think the war on terror has just exacerbated the problem. I think killing terrorists has just made more terrorists. I think the reason they attacked us in the first place was that we were over there. So she's a little bit more like Rand Paul than Ron Paul, or Jesse Ventura. Those guys are against the war on terror. They realize that is the war on terror is a joke. She wasn't really on that page. She believed in the war on terror. I didn't. Some things that scared me about her was she voted with the Democrats 98% of the time or something like that, if you look at her voting record. And she did seem to have a very independent streak. But if you looked through her history, it was isolated incidents. It wasn't like someone like Rand Paul who votes against the party all the time. And yeah, so I definitely agreed with her much more than I disagreed with her. And then, as I said in the other video, especially when you had those other options, what are you going to do? Something I really liked about her that a lot of libertarians don't realize is she was personally pro-union, but she explicitly said in several town halls that I like unions, but I'm not going to print everything with a rubber stamp. I think unions should be voluntary. So she basically supported right to work states. I don't think she ever said that explicitly, but she pretty much pointed to that. And then, she supported school choice. She supported charter schools. And so a lot of those things that Democrats tend to rail against, she was fine with supporting. The only other guy I remember supporting charter schools was Cory Booker, but he kind of dropped that topic in the election. And then, when it came to drugs, she was for legalizing all drugs. And I don't think anybody else said that. I think Pete Buttigieg said something about how that was the direction we needed to move toward. But she just straight up said it. Nope, all drugs should be legal. She was for prostitution being legal. And the thing is that's interesting, and this is what I liked about her, is she's a very religious, personally conservative person. But she realizes that people should be allowed to make their own decisions, that the government shouldn't be making those decisions for you. A lot of Democrats are okay with things that they're okay with. Like if I would do this personally, I'm fine with other people doing it. That was not her. She was very conservative, but wanted people to make their own choices. I really respected that. Another thing she said that a lot of Democrats would have been afraid of is she was not against capitalism. She said capitalism is good, crony capitalism is not. So bank bailouts, subsidies, she was against those things, and that was cool. Trying to think what else. Yeah, so I mean, I happily would have voted for her over Donald Trump. It's not even close. Like Donald Trump, what do I agree with him on? Some deregulation that he's done. I'm with him. I'm more impressed that he hasn't done some things that I would thought he would do, which isn't really much of a compliment. If you don't do something terrible, I'm expecting you to. But that's really mostly what I can give him. Like, I'm impressed we didn't go to war with North Korea. I'm impressed we didn't go to war with Iran. But there's not much crossover there. I happily would have voted for Tulsi Gabbard over him. I guess the things I would be worried about if she were president would be that even though she talked about the debt and the deficit and responsible spending a lot, especially right now with everything that she's co-sponsored, it's obvious that that's not a forefront issue. I think she was pushing that because she knew she had a lot of libertarian-leaning followers. I doubt we'd see a balanced budget under a Gabbard administration. I think she would sign a lot of bills that came to her desk. I think really what we would get out of her is a humble foreign policy. And even that I'm a little nervous about because of the war on terror, how she believes in that. So I don't really know how much. Maybe we would pull troops home, but I don't really know how much conflict would be abated in the Middle East with her. So yeah, that's about it. As I said in that other video, I'm gonna have to see what she does in the future. Right now, I'm not supportive of her because of the way she's been voting and the Democratic establishment she's been cheerleading. That's enough for me to say, okay, I'm done like advocating for you. I know she's not running anymore, but I mean even just elevating her. Like, if you say something I agree with, I will like it and repost it or something. But if you, if you continue to push stuff I disagree with, I'm not going to advocate it. She's definitely still my favorite Democrat. I can't really think of anyone else who comes close. What I would like to see her do is I'd like to see her leave the Democratic Party and become a libertarian, because I think that with foreign policy, she used to really believe in interventionism. That's why she joined the National Guard. She openly said that, like, I believed that we needed to go to Iraq. And then she went there and she saw what a joke it was and how terrible the cost of life and money and everything was. And she changed her mind. So I'm hoping that she can see that with some of her social program ideas. Like, I'm hoping she can see how making college free would not help us where we are right now, or that a minimum wage only hurts the people it's intended to help. I hope that those types of things she can start to see, and that she moves away from the Democratic Party, because honestly, if we could have a ticket like a Justin Amash, Tulsi Gabbard in 2024, that ticket could actually win. So I hope she realizes that the Democrats don't share any of her values anyways. If she really cares about foreign policy, criminal justice reform, civil liberties, all these things that she put at the forefront, then she really should join the Libertarian Party. And the one thing that doesn't really fit well is she's really big on the environment. And I am too, and I think libertarians need to start moving that way, because there are libertarian approaches we can take to climate change. So it would be great. I'm seeing a fracture in the party already. I'm seeing people start to have that concern, and Joe Jorgensen even talks about it. So I'm hoping we're moving in that direction, and that someone like Tulsi Gabbard, if she dropped some of her social policies, could feel welcome under our tent, and that would be my biggest hope. So I didn't cover literally every issue there, but I covered a lot of them, what I agreed with her, disagreed with her on. Leave a comment below what you think about Tulsi Gabbard, what you think about my opinions. And thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll catch you next time.